Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my top starts of the week for week 7 of the 2022 fantasy football season. Now, I am recording this video a little earlier in the week. It is Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. I'm recording it earlier because I am heading out of town for a trip to Florida, so I'm not going to be at my setup, so it's going to be hard to put out a video later in the week. So I thought I'd just record it now and post it now for you guys. But with that, since it's earlier in the week, that means you have to monitor the news. So I'm going to give you my starts of the week as of what we know now, but you always want to stay up to date with what's going on in fantasy, because throughout the week, things can change in the blink of an eye, whether it be with injury or roster moves or whatever it might be. So these are going to be my starts of the week as of today. We're going to get into our starts of the week now for week 7 of the 2022 fantasy football season. And we're going to start with the quarterback position with Tua against the Pittsburgh Steelers. As of now, he should be coming back from his injury. Pittsburgh is a defense that's been a good matchup for quarterbacks throughout the year, although I made Tom Brady a start last week and he was very disappointing. But I'm still going to roll with Tua. He's coming back from his concussion, more than likely. And it's a good matchup. He's got the weapons with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. In that game against my Minnesota Vikings, Jalen Waddle did appear to injure his shoulder late in that game. So if Waddle does miss the game or is limited, that might affect Tua's value a little bit. But even if Jalen Waddle does go through that, he still has Tyreek Hill. And he does have some other weapons there. So I think Tua in his game back from injury should be a good start, and he does have some big upside with those weapons. Now we're going to talk about another guy who is coming back from injury. That is going to be Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. He hasn't played since week 1, so it is good that we're getting some of these quarterbacks back because there are a lot of teams on bye this week. So I think Dak Prescott, if you're dealing with a bye week or an injury or whatever, he could be a nice quarterback start. I know in my 2 quarterback league, I have Geno, Kirk Cousins, and Dak Prescott. Kirk Cousins has a bye week, so I'm going to be playing Dak Prescott and Geno Smith. So Dak Prescott in week 7, he does have a nice matchup against the Detroit Lions. They've been a good matchup for quarterbacks this year. And their defense isn't that good in general. The Cowboys defense, however, is pretty good. So there is it's really good. So there is some concern that maybe the Cowboys just blow the Lions out and Dak doesn't need to throw the ball a lot. But the Detroit offense has been quite amazing this season outside of one game against New England. So if the Lions are able to put up points and keep up with the Cowboys, and Dak has to throw the ball a little bit more than you might expect, that's when he could have a big explosive game. But even if that doesn't happen, I still think he is a nice, safe option at the quarterback position. And now I'm going to give you a little bit more of a streaming option. This is someone who I will be starting in a different league where I have Kirk Cousins on bye in a 1 quarterback league. And that is Jimmy Garoppolo of the San Francisco 49ers. Last week, he had a nice game against the Atlanta Falcons in a game that they were trailing. He put up almost 20 fantasy points in whatever scoring Fantasy Pros uses here. He had a couple passing touchdowns. He's got the weapons. And in that game, they were losing and they were forced to throw the ball and abandon the run. And that is the exact same game script I expect to happen in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Regardless, I think it'll be a competitive game. So I don't think there's going to be running the ball up the middle of the whole game. So I think the 49ers are going to have to throw the ball a lot. He's got Debo, he's got Brandon Aiyuk, he's got George Kittle. And I'm not saying he's like a top 3 play this week, but like I said, he's a nice streaming option if you do have someone on bye. Now we're going to move on to the running back position, and we are going to go with someone on the Dallas Cowboys, the same team as Dak Prescott, one of my quarterback starts of the week. We're going to go with Ezekiel Elliott, running back of the Dallas Cowboys. He has not had a signature Ezekiel Elliott season, but last week in a tough matchup on the road, he did go 13 for 81 on the ground. He got in the end zone. He's not seeing a ton of work through the air, which is a little bit disappointing, but it was nice to see him be efficient on his carries last week in a tough matchup. Now in week 7, he gets a really juicy matchup against the Detroit Lions, one of the best matchups for running backs in all of fantasy football. I think the Cowboys are going to win this game. I think Ezekiel Elliott will be able to see volume on the ground. And even if he isn't used in the air very much, I still think he should see enough volume on the ground, have enough scoring opportunities. I think there's a good chance he gets in the end zone. And just in general, he should put up a decent amount of yards at the very least. So he is probably more of like a running back 2 at this point in his career in the right matchup, but I think this is a week that you can start Zeke. If you're not going to start him now, when are you going to start him? If you want to sell high at any point on Ezekiel Elliott, Maybe he has a couple nice matchups coming up here, so maybe you want to sell high after he has those good games. If he does have good performances in those matchups, maybe you want to sell high after that. But regardless, for week 7, I think he's a great, solid start against Detroit. Now we're going to talk about one of my starts of the week from last week as well. That worked out amazing. We're going to go with Rhamondre Stevenson, running back of the New England Patriots. This one is really simple, guys. He was a great, talented player, good for fantasy before Damien Harris got injured. Then Damien Harris left with an injury in week 5 against Detroit. He saw a ton of volume in a great matchup, was amazing with it, had 18.5 half PPR points. I made him a start of the week in week 6 in another great matchup against Cleveland. He had 2 touchdowns, saw all the volume in the backfield, had 23.1 fantasy points in half PPR. And in week 7, if Damien Harris is out yet again, he is going to be a must-start running back in a matchup with the Chicago Bears. And on top of that, even if Damien Harris does return, that will affect Rhamondre Stevenson's upside and potential for volume a little bit. But I still would start Rhamondre Stevenson with confidence, even if Damien Harris is back. It might just limit his upside a little bit, so you might have to change your expectations based on the Damien Harris news. So like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm posting this earlier in the week, so we'll have to monitor the practice reports and what's going on with Damien Harris. But regardless, I think you should be starting Rhamondre Stevenson, whether Damien Harris plays or not. And I'm going back to another running back that I made a start of the week last week that worked out really well. That's going to be Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. Last week, with no Rashad Penny, he's out for the season. This is Kenneth Walker's backfield, and he proved that in week 6. 21 for 97 on the ground. He got in the end zone. He saw a few targets, had a couple receptions, 18 points in half PPR. Now against the Chargers, which is a great matchup for running backs. I know a lot of people might see the Chargers and think, oh, that's a good team. And they are a good team, but they give it up on the ground to running backs. So Kenneth Walker, I think he is yet again another solid start. He should see a ton of volume. It's a good matchup. He's got running back 1 upside in this matchup, so I would try to get him into your lineup. You know, remember when I said monitor the news? This is one of those players that you're going to have to do that for. That is Kenyan Drake, running back of the Baltimore Ravens. So obviously J.K. Dobbins, he had that big knee injury. He's their main starting running back. He came back from injury, and last I heard, as of this recording, he was kind of dealing with a little bit of a setback. It like flared up or tightened up or something like that. So last week in week 6 against the Giants, Kenyan Drake saw 10 carries, took 1 to the house. He had 119 yards and a rushing touchdown. He had a nice good game for fantasy. So in week 7, if it comes out that Dobbins is going to be limited or miss the game or something, Kenyan Drake against the Cleveland Browns, which is a great matchup, he is someone that you could use in a pinch as maybe a flex option. It's really going to come down to what happens with J.K. Dobbins and that other, stable of running backs they have there. Just monitor the news. There is opportunity in this backfield against the Cleveland Browns run defense, but if it's going to be split up between a bunch of players and no one sees that much volume, it might just be a messy situation. But I think someone should be valuable in this backfield, especially if Dobbins is limited. I think that person will be Kenyan Drake, but monitor the news. Next week when I do my recap of the previous week, if Kenyan Drake was a bust, I'm going to say, hey, did you monitor the news? Did you see if J.K. Dobbins, what his situation was? Did they report that Kenyan Drake would see a lot of volume, not a lot of volume? What did they report? So just stay up to date with that, and he might be a good start. And I hate to pick on the Detroit Lions, guys, but we're going to move on to the wide receiver position, and we are targeting that Lions defense again. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, is a nice start this week, week 7 against the Detroit Lions. He's probably someone that's in your lineup regardless, but he's coming off of 2 weeks where he didn't have the most explosive games, 53 and 68 yards, no touchdowns. So I figured I'd bring him up in this game. He gets a nice matchup. I've talked about the Detroit defense enough already. Dak should be coming back, even if Cooper Rush is the quarterback. CeeDee Lamb has been able to produce even with Cooper Rush under center. So that doesn't really change too much of what I think about CeeDee Lamb. I think he's a strong start regardless. But yeah, he's a wide receiver 1 this week. Put him in your lineup. And I think at the very least, he's a safe play. But if this turns into a shootout or something, if it's a higher scoring game, he's got some weak winning upside. So put CeeDee in your lineup. Next up at the wide receiver position, we have Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. He's been up and down this season, but he's been more up than down. And Amari Cooper, it's looking like he's one of those guys you just put in your lineup. You go through the explosions, and the not so great weeks, the bust weeks. You just live with whatever he does, kind of like Mike Williams. He'll have his week winning weeks, and he'll also have his disappearing acts. Week 7 against the Baltimore Ravens secondary, I think it projects to be a matchup where he will have one of his better games. It's a good matchup against the Ravens. They can put up points. The Browns can put up points, surprisingly, with Jacoby Brissett. So it might be a game where they have to throw the ball a little bit for Cleveland. So regardless, it's a good matchup. And with the game script, I don't think the Browns are just going to be able to run the ball, with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt the entire game. I think they're going to have to air it out at least a little bit. So Amari Cooper, I think, is a nice play. And I think he does have some upside if it is one of his signature Amari Cooper blow-up games. All right, now we're going to go with Allen Lazard of the Green Bay Packers. There's kind of a weird stable of wide receivers with different opportunities going on in Green Bay now that Devontae Adams is not on the team this season. But through it all, Allen Lazard has been, I would say, the best option. Like Romeo Doubs has had his weeks. Randall Cobb had a week in there, maybe 2, but he is now out with an injury, last I heard. So in week 7 against the Washington defense, I think Allen Lazard is a nice play. He's seeing solid targets, and he's doing quite a bit with it. Even if he's not getting the yardage, he is getting in the end zone. So I think he should see a fair amount of targets, be at least a nice, safe play. And if he does hit this high yardage like he did in week 4, or if he gets in the end zone like he does every other week other than week 4, he'll be a nice play. So at this point, he's someone that you probably put in your lineup unless it's just a brutal matchup, which this is not. So I would start up Allen Lazard. All right, now we're going to talk about the 49ers, guys. I said I like Jimmy G. He's got to throw the ball to somebody, okay? So Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about someone a little more under the radar. He's their third option in their passing game, but that's going to be Brandon Aiyuk of the 49ers. Obviously, I would like to start Kittle and Deebo as well. But I'm going to talk about Aiyuk here because he's kind of an up and down player, but through the season, he's had games with higher targets and not so high targets. He's kind of been up and down. Last week against Atlanta, he had his best game of the season, 8 receptions on 11 targets, 83 yards, and got in the end zone twice. I'm not saying he's going to replicate that stat line necessarily, but like I said with Jimmy G, I think the 49ers are going to have to throw the ball a decent amount in this game. And while Deebo and George Kittle might overtake the game and not leave enough for Brandon Aiyuk, I think Aiyuk is good enough and has shown enough in this, last week in that pass-heavy game script that he can be usable for fantasy in the right matchup. So I think week 7 against the Chiefs, he is someone that you could put in your lineup if you don't have a studly wide receiver core, or if you're dealing with bye weeks or whatever. I think he's a nice solid play, and he does have some upside like he showed in week 6. And then finally at tight end, we're going to go with Gerald Everett of the LA Chargers. He is another player who has been up and down. A lot of players are not just this consistent rock solid start every week, especially at the tight end position, unless your name is Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce. So as sort of someone you probably picked up off the waiver wire, he is a nice start against the Seattle Seahawks, which is arguably the best matchup in all of fantasy football. If you just look at the numbers, they've been giving up so many points to tight ends, more than any other team. Last week, I made Zach Ertz a start against the Seahawks, and he had a nice game. So I know he's coming off of 2 sort of down games, but against Seattle in week 7, the matchup is too good to at least not consider him. Keenan Allen might be back for this game. So if Keenan Allen is back with Mike Williams, with Gerald Everett, that might affect how much volume Gerald Everett is able to see. So we'll see how that pans out. It is possible that Keenan Allen's return siphons targets more so away from Austin Eckler, who's been seeing a lot of targets. So, it's kind of, we'll just have to see what happens with that. But the whole point of this, guys, the point of this start of the week is it's the best matchup in fantasy for tight ends. Right now, I am deciding, do I play Zach Ertz against the Saints, a much better defense, or do I play Gerald Everett against the Seahawks, the best matchup for tight ends? So that's kind of the level that Gerald Everett is at this week, at least in my book. All right, y'all, that's going to do it for the week 7 starts of the week. Now, really quickly, we're going to look back at week 6, my starts of the week from last week, to see what went well and what didn't go so well. So at quarterback, I had Kirk Cousins as a start of the week. He was a quarterback 1, quarterback 12 on the week, 16.5 fantasy points. So that was a nice solid call. One that didn't work out, and I'm not going to even blame myself for this, it was Tom Brady. He was the quarterback 16, but only 13.72 points in whatever format this website uses. I'm assuming it's 4-point passing touchdown. But either way, he wasn't that good of a call. So it was a good matchup, and he had all his weapons, and I don't know, it just didn't work out for the Bucks. Another player that didn't work out very well was Geno Smith. He'd been great so far this season. I finally throw him in there as a start of the week, and he does nothing. So it is what it is. We move on. But I think Geno will be, he'll have his weeks for fantasy moving forward. I don't want to overreact to one down week. Now moving on to the running back position. I mean, you can't get much better than this. Rhamondre Stevenson, running back 1 on the week, ladies and gentlemen. 23.1 fantasy points and half PPR. He was one of my starts of the week, and that worked out very well. I also started Deion Jackson in another league, so that was fun. I believe we talked about him in my setting lineups video where I set all my lineups, and I did start him with an injured Jonathan Taylor, and it worked out. But moving on to another start of the week, it's Eno Benjamin filling in for that injured backfield in Arizona. Running back 22, but only 8 points and half PPR. He was someone that everyone was sort of banging the table for, and it just didn't work out. He didn't kill your lineup with 8 points, but you were definitely hoping for more. And then Jeff Wilson, he's going to be far down on this list for sure. Yeah, guys, like I said, with that game script for the 49ers, the reason why I like Jimmy Garoppolo week 7 is the exact reason why Jeff Wilson, their running back in San Francisco, had a horrible game. They just didn't run the ball enough. He had 7 carries, 25 yards, only 1 target, and didn't even catch it. And he did lose a fumble, apparently, too. So just a complete bust of a week. Half a point. Wow. I'm sorry if you listen to me. Maybe you shouldn't listen to me, but I don't think anyone expected that to happen. That was kind of crazy. But we're back to the good news here. I said to start Kenneth Walker. He did great. 18 points and half PPR. First career start, I'm assuming, I'm assuming Penny started all the other games. He at least played more. And then Kenneth Walker, he was great. 18 points, running back 8 on the week. So you're never going to complain about that. At wide receiver, I said Adam Thielen was a start of the week. 4 for 36. Not great, but he did get in the end zone. I said I liked his chances to score. You would hope for a little bit more yardage, but for a guy at Adam Thielen's level, for fantasy purposes, you'll take that. Hey, him and Jefferson are right next to each other. Nice. But Adam Thielen, they got the win. He got the touchdown. Skull Vikings. Duvernay did not work out. I mean, I don't even know. He had like 1 catch. I almost started Duvernay over, what was his name for the Colts? Jackson was his name? I forgot his name already. But luckily, I would have lost if I did that. But luckily, I did not start Duvernay in that league. Hopefully, you didn't listen to me about Duvernay. Although I never would have expected he'd go 1 for 14. But that was just a weird, I don't even know what happened there. But moving on to the next player here. Marquise Brown, 5 for 68, 9.3 points. He was another start of the week. Not an electric week. I have made him a start of the week 3 times. And every time I've done that, it was week 1, week 2, and week 6. So every time I didn't make him a start of the week, he had his 3 best games of the year. And then whenever I did make him a start of the week, he's had his 3 worst games of the year. So from now on, if I say to start Hollywood Brown, probably don't do it. Although he did get injured in that game, is going to be out like 6 weeks. So you might not have to worry about it. And I thought the website was glitched here because Metcalf didn't show up. But he actually had that bad of a game where he's this far down. I said start Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and my God, did they disappoint. 4.4 points for Metcalf. 2.7 for Tyler Lockett. So that was a complete and utter disappointment. Someone from that game panned out at least a little bit, and that's Zach Ertz. He had a good game. I was very high on this game in general, and nothing really worked out other than Zach Ertz. Tight end 11, 10.5 points and half PPR. And then George Kittle, I called for the bounce back game, and he did that. 8 for 80 through the air, tight end 6 on the week, 12.3 points and half PPR. So we'll take that. Oh, and his name was Deion Jackson. I forgot his name a second ago. Is Deion Jackson. Got to give him his respect after tying Rhamondre Stevenson for the running back 1 on the week. So with that being said, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. And I will see you guys later. Peace out.